As we've seen with Star Wars and now the Marvel Cinematic Universe, everything Disney touches eventually turns to woke. There's no denying that the MCU is in serious creative and thematic decline. Since 2019's Endgame, things have not been the same, and that film brought to an end the Infinity Saga, giving us the final curtain call for Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, Captain America, and Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Iron Man. Since then, things have been going not so great.
He almost tasted that. Num 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 num, eat it up. Go play okay, 3, 2, 1. You know I'm the hottest, you ain't never gotta heat me up.
And despite successes with the last two Spider-Man films, Far From Home and No Way Home, the overall trajectory of the MCU has been decline. Now, to be fair, wokeness in Phase 4 has not been the MCU's only problem. The reality is, any big franchise would be struggling creatively after 29 feature films and a myriad of TV series. The question becomes, does the MCU really need to recover? What superhero stories are still left to be told that haven't been told at this point? Haven't we seen every conceivable permutation of CGI-heavy, superpowered, world-saving heroics already? Is there any new ground to be broken here? Any interesting new stories or character exploration left to explore? Hollywood will just never gracefully retire a profitable franchise. They will milk that property till it becomes unpopular, unprofitable, and no longer relevant. The only purpose the MCU seems to serve right now is a political one, to push the message. Well, it appears regardless, two things are going to happen to breathe some life back into this once great franchise. The first is the introduction of Deadpool into the MCU in his third big screen outing. The second is that Hugh Jackman is going to appear as Wolverine in that same film, which is something that his friend Ryan Reynolds has wanted for a very long time now, for both characters to be in the same film. This was announced on social media by Reynolds and Jackman just a couple of days ago.
But we did have one idea. Hey Hugh, you want to play Wolverine one more time?
Yeah, sure, Ryan.
Now, for my thoughts on this, firstly, Jackman already said his goodbyes as Wolverine in his last outing with the character in 2017's Logan, where the character was, spoilers for those who haven't seen that film from 5 years ago, killed off by a big dead tree. Now, in a second video, Reynolds and Jackman explain that the events of Logan will not be altered because that takes place in 2029, and presumably Deadpool 3 will take place prior to Logan's death in that film. Of course, there's any number of other magical multiverse explanations that could be deployed in order to incorporate Jackman's character. This will also mark the second time that there's been a crossover between the X-Men and the MCU. Indeed, Patrick Stewart recently returned to play Professor Xavier in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. He was, of course, playing an alternative universe version of the character, but it marked the first time Stewart had played Professor X since Logan, where his character also died. So, in a way, the precedent had been set for Jackman to return at some point. Logan/Wolverine is certainly a much-loved character, and one of the strongest Marvel superheroes, perhaps comparable in stature to Tony Stark, which leads me to wonder if it's just a matter of time before Robert Downey Jr. is asked to once again put back on the Iron Man suit. I would not be surprised. Disney, Marvel might become so desperate in a few years of poor-performing MCU films and TV series that they may consider making him an offer he can't refuse. There are very few things that would reignite fan interest in the MCU, like getting the Avengers band back together. Natasha Romanoff's demise was also deeply unsatisfying. Nothing a bit of multiversing wouldn't fix, and old man Steve Rogers isn't exactly the best send-off for the character. And plenty of stories could be told with him in the alternate past he travelled back to in order to be with Peggy at the end of Endgame. But all of this is simply reverting back to what previously worked, because what's happening now in the MCU really isn't working. The best days of the MCU are behind it, and if we do eventually start to see the return of some old faces, even popular characters that were previously killed off, we can conclude that it's only being done as a course correction in order to curry favour with the fans once again. Retreading old ground and bringing back retired MCU characters in order to sell more cinema tickets and Disney Plus subscriptions might work in the short term, but it would be admitting that the franchise is out of ideas. But is that what's needed to save the MCU at this point? Or can the return of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in the upcoming third Deadpool film be sufficient to save the MCU? Keeping in mind this film won't be released for another 2 years. Thanks very much for watching. Looking forward to your comments below. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.